We're back in the MKM Stadium car park. It's Cooper's Tales from the car park on a day where Hull City's unbeaten start to the Championship has come to a shuddering halt. A 3-0 defeat to a really impressive Blackburn Rovers team. And yeah, City well beaten in the end, in truth. But it's hard to get away from the fact there was a big sickness bug before the game that had an impact on the team. We talked about that on Thursday, that City, basically the entire dressing room had been ravaged by a sickness and diarrhoea bug. And if I'm honest, if you watch the game today, you could probably tell that quite a few players had been poorly, because if you think back to last Sunday, the start was electric. Gelhardt inside a minute scored a goal. There was nothing like that today. I mean, sometimes you wonder how much the early kickoff can impact an atmosphere. So the ground wasn't exactly the most vibrant, particularly compared to last week. But it took 6 or 7 minutes for City to even get into the Blackburn Rovers half. And they were just really tepid, really flat. They looked lethargic. And that kind of carried on for the 90 minutes, really. But, you know, the gaffer, Jakirovic, keen not to make any excuses. He said we weren't good enough, we were sloppy, we were poor, we gave awful goals away. But as I say, the caveat being, there was a lot of players, a lot of players were carrying this illness. It even affected some of the coaching staff who were in bed this week. A lot of them haven't trained. So look, and it's not an aftermatch. Oh, we've been beaten 3-0, so we'll trot out the. By the way, before the game, everybody was sick, and that's why we reported it on Thursday. I went to the training ground and said straight after that there'd been some illness in the camp. It did for Charlie Hughes. Charlie Hughes wasn't involved today. Don't panic on Charlie Hughes. He wasn't not involved today because he's being sold on Monday. I know when you get this close to the window closing, a week on Monday, there's been firm bids. There's a lot of interest in Charlie Hughes. Do you think the club needs the money? You know, has he been taken out of the team because of that? No, as it stands, Charlie Hughes is a Hull City player. There's no movement on his future. His future is at Hull City, purely just not well enough. Expected back at Ashton Gate on Saturday. There were other players that were impacted. Akin Famewo, yeah, we were told on Thursday he'd got a kick to his ankle in training, but he was another one that fell victim to the sickness bug. And as I say, you could tell as an example, Casey Palmer came in. We spoke to Casey in the press conference. He came in coughing and spluttering, and he said he'd been really poorly himself. I cut that the conversation we had about his sickness before going on the record. I cut out of the podcast episode largely because there was a bit of swearing in it. But Casey, he walked in covering his mouth as an example. So, look, no excuses. City were rubbish for the most part. Blackburn were full value for their victory. I thought they looked really bright. To say they came into on the back of 2 league defeats and a cup exit to Bradford, they looked really, their front three, front four looked really good. Todd Cantwell, when he was upright and not, kissing the turf, looked dominant. I mean, they gave him far too much space. He bossed the game. He was really, really good, I thought, Todd Cantwell. And he got the third goal that kind of killed it off. If we wind back a little bit, so as I say, City started it was just really flat. First kind of, 10, 12 minutes, Rovers were dominant without looking like scoring. They didn't create anything, but they had pressure. They won a couple of free kicks. City were a yard off it, at least a yard off it, probably greater. Football's a funny game though, isn't it? Because basically out of nothing, I think it was Undala from the left put a cross in. Yuri Ribeiro, the Portuguese left back, who I really like, back post under no pressure. Communication breakdown with the goalkeeper, sort of just heads at goal, and the goalkeeper has to turn it around the post. City get a corner. From the corner, Gelhardt's corner comes in. McBurney arcs his head and gets a really good header in the corner. And the goalkeeper palms it away. A couple of moments later, Undala cuts in off the flank, bends it top corner. Goalkeeper makes a really good save. So no word of a joke. That was before the opening goal comes on 18 minutes. They could have been 2-3-0 up before Blackburn scored. So there was like that flurry of activity in that kind of like 2-3 minute spell when there was almost an own goal from Ribeiro, McBurney's header, and then Ndala's shot. they could have been 2-3-0 up, and then they just get picked apart. Really clever, well-worked goal. Ryan Hedges lifts it over the goalkeeper, and it's 1-0. It wasn't great defending. Cathal McCarthy, in for his debut at the age of 18. He only signed from University College Dublin in the summer, and he joined the academy. But you know, he impressed in the summer. Obviously, perhaps a consequence of the transfer situation, that they hadn't got a lot of players at that point. He, along with one or two others, were taken out to Turkey. I did an interview with him out in Turkey, which I'll try and put up as a podcast this week, actually, if I get a chance. But yeah, he was kind of almost not. I don't want to be disrespectful to him, because he's a really, really talented young kid. But he was almost taken out to bolster the numbers to Turkey, and he came on against Istanbulspor and looked brilliant. That was in midfield. He's naturally centre half, so he was given his debut today alongside John Egan. But him and Drame got caught, the ball in behind, and Hedges clipped it over. I wonder if Pandor should have done better. He went to ground very, very quickly, and Hedges, who's a very, very good player at this level, just lifted it over him. I guess, but going in at half time at 1-0 down, you kind of think that, well, it'll maybe change it second half, tweak it a little bit, try and get them closer to Todd Cantwell and stop him dictating things. Because Blackburn were very clever at playing between the City lines and off the flanks. They didn't really get a chance to do anything, because they had the ball at the start of the second half. Lundstrom went in for a challenge. From where I looked, it looked like he won the ball. He caught the man, but it looked on first view, and I've not seen a replay, that he won the ball. Referee, who was absolutely awful today for both teams, just whistle happy, breaking up all the time. Tom Neal, just a rubbish performance. Irritating performance. Gave a free kick. City didn't deal with it in terms of the ball out wide. Cross comes in, and Ohashi turned it in. Now the suggestion is he was offside. Again, I haven't seen a replay, but Jukirovic was unhappy. The replays apparently suggest that Ohashi was offside. Obviously, that goes in 46 minutes, within seconds of the restart. Essentially, a bit of a throwback to under Ruben last season, conceding pretty much every week at the start of the second half. And then before they had a chance to kick off, down the right hand side, Pandor flapped a ball in, and Cantwell took it past him and slots it in very cleanly. And within 5 minutes of the second half starting, the game was finished. They were 3-0 down, and it was just a procession. Dom Hyam hit the bar in the second half after that with a header from a corner. There was never any real threat of City getting back into it. He loaded. He put Carl Joseph on. He put Akintola on, who had a half chance. Gauhart fizzed it, looking for McBurney. It came off McBurney, and Akintola just couldn't sort his feet out at the back post, and that chance was gone. Maybe if they could have got an early goal, it would have lifted the crowd a bit and given them something. But look, in truth, once that third goal goes in, it was game, set, and match. Ian, referee, was from Accrington. Was he from Accrington? He wasn't very good today. And City didn't lose because of the referee. Let's make it, abundantly clear. But he was just irritating, and there was 2 moments in the second half where he got in the way of and this is for Blackburn as well. Blackburn were on the attack, and he got in the way of. There was one, he got in the way of a ball, and then he restarted it. He gave it back to Blackburn to restart, and he got in the way of that. And that's where, for me, common sense comes into it. Yes, I know that if the ball hits the referee, they're supposed to stop it. But Blackburn had the ball. They still had the ball. They'd not lost anything from it. Just play on. And it's like, it was just whistle after whistle after whistle. It was like, there was a pre-season game. I think it was Sunderland when Oliver Langford was referee. And he clearly had a new whistle for in the off-season. And he just blew it all the time. It just ruins the... Oh, my God. Coventry, by the way, have just gone 7-0 up over QPR at the CBS Arena, which is now theirs. Congratulations to them, by the way. Just irritating. And look, today's one of those games. You've just got to... Look, expectations were raised after the performance against Oxford. Yes, they only won by the odd goal. But the performance was better than a 3-2 win. They were much better than that. These results, it's the Championship. This result can happen. And if you're not at it, if you're 99%, you'll get beat. And City were below 50% because of illness. Obviously, no Charlie Hughes. We know Matt Crooks was you know, whether or not he was impacted by the illness is irrelevant. He was out anyway, and he probably won't be back for Ashton Gate on Saturday. His ankle injury isn't great. His foot today was still in a protective boot, but they hope he'll be back for the Swansea game after the break. So, there's obviously, we knew that coming into the season that they'd got a good team. The squad is lacking, the depth is lacking because of, you know, and this is it's times like now where the transfer restrictions really impact them, because they can't go out and replace Shemi Ajay. They can't go out with his hamstring problem. They can't go out and replace anybody else. So that they need, and he's repeatedly said it, Jukurovic. He said, if everybody's healthy, we've got a chance. It's when we lose players is the real, Adam, in terms of Egan, I've not seen the replay. I only ever see it. We don't have replays. We don't have tellies or anything, so I only ever see it in real time. So, but look, defensively they were poor today. They were absolute. They just weren't at it. They were poor, and as I say, you couldn't. Yes, they weren't. There was a lot of players feeling the after effects of the virus, but you can't make it. You know, at this level, you have to accept that when you go out there, if you're not at it, you'll get beaten. They could have no complaints. And as I say, the manager is making no excuses. If you read his comments post-match, he made it clear they were sloppy on the ball. They were poor with the ball, without the ball. They didn't, in transition, they were sloppy. They didn't close people down. They didn't run hard enough. So if you don't do those things, then you will get beat. And we've said throughout the summer, what they have been good at is working hard, being organised, being resolute. None of those things were apparent today, and there are contributing factors, but ultimately they were well beaten. So that's a real problem. Michael, what's the case of sending players out on loan? Can they bring players? Joseph needs a loan. Well, they can send first team players out. So on the transfer subject, let's crack on with that. Abu Kamara's going to Getafe, but that initially that's going to be a loan. Getafe have got some registration problems. This isn't a City problem only, the transfer problems. Getafe have got issues about registering players themselves in La Liga. So that's a loan. So Kamara going means that they can bring in one player. And we believe that player that they will bring in, or are trying to bring in, is Amir Hadzimitovic, the Besiktas defensive midfielder, although he can play a bit further forward. So he's a Bosnian international. We expect that he's the player that they are trying. Well, I believe he's the player they're pushing hard for. But unless they move other players out, whether it be, and don't take this as anything happening, I'm just chucking names: Regan Slater, Carl Joseph, Oliver McBurney, as an example. If they get players out, they can bring players in. But it is, and we've said this since for quite a while now. But it's one player in, one player out, and so Kamara going, which it looks like he was in. What day are we today? Saturday. He travelled to Spain on Friday, yesterday, to complete the formalities of that move, and so Kamara go and frees up his space. Now, what I would say is we're coming into the end of the window, and the warning. Look, we've all seen enough transfer windows at Hull City, particularly, but everywhere. It's mental. Anything can happen in the final week. Can I sit here and guarantee Charlie Hughes will be a Hull City player at 8 o'clock next Monday night? No, absolutely not. Because if somebody comes in with £15 million, he's going to go. That's the reality of a club in the championship without parachute payments. That's not just because Hull City have had cash flow problems over the summer, are working under transfer restrictions, so can't buy players. That is a reality. If realistically, if any Premier League team comes in for a player at a Championship club with big money, they're going to go. It's just the nature of the beast. So it's not a City-specific situation. But Charlie wasn't left out today. But as far as we're told, and you can only go on what you're being told, I've had it from 3 people that would know, that have all said Charlie Hughes was ill. No reason to disbelieve that. I know it's silly season and things happen, and etc. I know Coventry are massively desperate for Charlie Hughes. We're just going to have to see what happens. But he was left out today because he was sick. So you hope that he's feeling a bit better. The gaffer said he's a bit better today, and it all being well, I'll be in the squad at Ashton Gate at the weekend. Look, as I say, it's the last week of the window. They need. I mean, I still think they need to send another defender, and this is meant in no disrespect to Famewo or Shemi Ajayi, because Shemi Ajayi was fantastic at Coventry, and it's probably no coincidence since Ajayi got himself, hurt his hamstring. They've conceded 3 at Wrexham, they've conceded 2 from set pieces against Oxford, and they've conceded 3 here this afternoon against Blackburn. So I'm not surprised that he's such a loss. The worry we said in the summer was that you've let Alfie Jones go, you've let Sean McLaughlin go, who did a terrific job on McBurney today, by the way, who are durable players. They're always available, they're never injured. And on paper, yes, Famewo and Ajayi are superb signings, but they've had massive problems with injury. Egan's had problems with injury. Charlie Hughes, I know he's ill, so it's a slightly different situation, but unavailable. There was so many players, last season, so many players not available. Jones and McLaughlin were always available, and you've kind of replaced them with players that have got massive concerns. And we're again with 3 league games into the season, and already your two summer signings at centre half aren't available to play. That's a massive worry. So durability of the squad, the ability to play 46 games a season, just is a massive concern. And as I say, the illness is unfortunate, but Famewo had got an injury in training anyway on Thursday. Ajayi's hamstrings, hurt, and yet maybe they're being overcautious with it. Maybe he could play, but the problem is, given Ajayi's record, if they play him with knowing there's a niggle there, does he damage it and then he's out for 3-4 months? That's the massive issue that the medical staff here are trying to weigh up. So, with respect, West Brom probably don't let Ajayi go if he's playing 40 games a season. That's the reality of it, because he's such a very, very good he's an incredibly gifted, powerful championship defender, but he's not available. He played 15 games last season. I think 26 the season before that. So that's a fundamental concern. On the plus side, Louis Coyle should be back at Bristol next week, Bristol City. And it's, again, they've signed Ennis Destan. He's injured. Yes, he might be back in training next week, but they signed a player who's injured, and that's the concern about. Jurkovic keeps talking about player durability, not having players available, and they're signing players that have got questionable injury. And I guess ultimately that's where City are at when you're surviving on the final day on goal difference, and you're under a transfer embargo. That's the issue. You are limited in what you can and can't sign. And as I say, I think they've done some fantastic business this summer. But defensively today is a consequence. You've got 3 or 4 centre halves aren't available, and you're having to play a teenager, Cathal McCarthy. As I say, I think fantastic young kid. Looked really good in pre-season, but it's all right looking good in friendly games, and it's another thing being thrust into a championship game. That's a different level. Robert, yeah, Coyle can play centre half. He's done that before. At Bristol, that's if depending on what the situation is next week. Hopefully Charlie's back and Charlie's in the team alongside Eags. But yeah, if Charlie isn't ready to play and Coyle is, maybe chucking Coyle at centre half again alongside Egan is a possibility. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. A lot is to come. Richard, could they try to push fringe players? Well, it depends what the fringe players are, because if they moved Harry Vaughan needs to go out on loan and play. He needs to go and play in League One every single week. He needs to play 40 games a season, not 10 minutes off the bench for City and then playing under 21s, and then he might play another 10 minutes off the bench in a month's time. But the problem is, if you move Harry Vaughan out on loan, because his wages are so low, I don't think it has any impact. I don't think moving Harry Vaughan out enables them to bring in another player. So it would need to be a senior player that they would move out to free up the wages. So I think that's a real problem for them. So, you know, the manager wants a centre half, the manager wants another midfielder, you know, he wants another winger. The reality of it is they haven't got the squad, they haven't got the ability in their squad to do that at the minute without moving players out. So as I say, it's what Kamara going. Hopefully they can bring in the guy from Amir from Besiktas, but it's a real problem. Who was it that said that? Sorry, just bear with me. Asking a few questions coming in. Thanks everybody for your questions. Michael, on a positive about Balumi, yeah, fantastic, and it's easy to get. Look, it's the third game of the season. Let's not get too wound up over today. There's a lot of mitigating factors. But Balumi, seeing Balumi back in the squad and getting 10 minutes off the bench, he looked really sharp as well. He did look good. I asked, if you've not read it, I asked Sergei why he wasn't being, because very often when players come back from lengthy injuries, they'll go into the 23s and they'll play, you know, they'll load minutes. They might play, you know, 20 minutes, half an hour, and then 40 minutes, 45 minutes as they build up their fitness to come back to a first team return. Nothing like that with Balumi, straight in at back in the first team. And I asked Sergei why that was the case, and he said he just didn't trust putting him in the 23s because of the quality of the pitches. You're playing against younger players that sometimes can make poor decisions. You know, he thought playing Balumi, and I guess it'll be the same with Liam Miller and Paul. I'll come on to that in a minute. I guess he felt that playing. But he said playing Balumi in 23's football or 21's football was too much of a risk. He'd rather control his minutes at first team and you know, he got 10 minutes today. I think the plan was, all being well, he'd got 20 minutes today. But obviously with the game as it was, he got 15, I think, with added time. Hopefully he'll get more. He'll get more at Bristol City on Saturday. It wouldn't surprise me if they have a behind closed doors training game during the international break for those players that aren't away on international duty, and they'll try and get maybe half an hour, maybe even 45 minutes into him. They've got to be really careful. Obviously, they don't need telling that clearly, but yeah, he doesn't want to risk him going out and playing on some dodgy pitches, you know, wherever. So that's Balumi. But yeah, fantastic. Look, huge positive, and for him, most importantly, for Mo to get back psychologically, but for City to have a player of that quality coming back is absolutely massive. Liam Miller, lots of questions over the last few days about why Balumi's back before Miller, given that Miller did his ACL against Burnley I think it was almost 2 weeks to the day. I think the Burnley game was a Tuesday night, and that the Oxford away on Bonfire night, I think when Balumi did his was a Wednesday. I think there's 2 weeks between them. But Liam, the damage to Liam's knee was far more serious. Both injuries are serious, don't get me wrong. But in terms of the damage that Liam Miller did, was far more extensive than Mo Balumi's. So Liam is taking a little bit longer to get back to fitness. The expectation, and we've said this for quite a while now, blimey, Stoke are flying 2-0 up at Southampton. Chef Wednesday have just pulled it back at 2-2 at Wrexham, by the way. Yeah, so Liam is expected back after the break. Probably not Southampton. Probably not Swansea, the first game back, but potentially the Southampton game here, which is the next home game in pretty much a month's time, which is absolutely wild. Let's answer some questions. Nathan, anything on Lalui? We're still waiting for confirmation. The expectation, and I know everybody's been asking this, and this is the one for me that's really the two people that have been really hurt by this process, and the fact that it's taken 2 months to get from appeal to outcome is Gus Puerta and Rida Lalui, particularly Lalui, because you know, Puerta wanted to go anyway. Puerta wanted to move this summer. Yes, he's been training. He's been at the club over the summer, but the expectation was, I think, that they would get rid of, that Puerta would be sold irrespective. So, you know, it is what it is. It looks like he's going to go back to Leverkusen. You know, essentially the deal that they had with Leverkusen, the loan to buy, is essentially null and void, and he goes back to Leverkusen. Quite what happens to his wages that City have been paying, I'm guessing that, you know, that's something that would be dealt with. I don't know the answer to that at this stage. logic would suggest, well, they've paid his wages. It's just one of them gone into the ether. But he'll go back to Leverkusen and probably be sold on somewhere else. Frustrating it is for City because they potentially had a deal lined up to sell him on, and I think they feel that the EFL have treated them really harshly in not allowing that deal to go through when they potentially got money lined up to sell him on. But you know, that's just unfortunate. Lelouis is a slightly different case. Obviously, he came over here with no idea what was going on. You know, he's signed, he's arrived, and he's brought his life over to Hull, and now it looks like he's going to have to go back. I mean, there is potential for him to be loaned, but that's something they're going to have to sort out. I feel so sad for both of them, because this is a really bad situation, and it could have, you know, it should not. And I'm not criticising anybody here specifically, but you know, you think that the City lodged their appeal on the 3rd of July, and it took until the 6th of August for that appeal to be heard, and then another 10 days, 12 days for the outcome. That's not good. I understand. I'm not stupid in that respect. Plenty would say I am. But I know it takes time for City to put their case together, for the EFL to put their case together, and for then the EFL to then find an independent panel, particularly in holiday season, is really hard. I get all of that. But during the transfer window, I just feel that taking, you know, so long was avoidable. But anyway, water under the bridge now. It's done and dusted, isn't it? Adam, why didn't he play Gauhart as the number 10? Partly defensive, I think, in terms of going back the other way. Gauhart's weren't going back, but I thought he played brilliantly last week off the side. Yeah, Casey wasn't effective today. Maybe you could have looked at shifting Gauhart more centrally, but equally, Gauhart is given a bit of a free role to drift in and operate where he sees fit. So he's not under Ruben Sayers. Gauhart was very much right wing, and that was it, and he'd stay right wing. Under Jukiewicz, he's got more of the ability to drift. Look, they just didn't play well. I don't think anything was necessarily tactical today. They just didn't play well. Robert Slater probably needs to go. Let's just looking at Southampton look to have got a goal back. Yeah, Matthew, it could be worse. It could be QPR at Coventry. That looks a great point, doesn't it? When you look Coventry scored 5 at Derby last weekend, and now they've scored 7 at home to at QPR and counting. Robert, I'd be surprised. I've just been speaking to Giles. I'd be very surprised if Giles was sold. But as I say, and I'm saying this with no ulterior motive here at all. It's the final days of the window. You just don't know, and any player that's got value, you can't rule out being sold. And I'm not saying they are going to. I'm not saying for a minute that's going to happen, but we all know what the final week of the window can be like. And suddenly they look at the squad and they see Crooks is out for, you know, a couple of weeks. They see Ajayi has got some problems, and if what's the saying that Ajayi comes back against Southampton and then he does his hamstring, he's out for another month. You can't carry on all season like that, and that's a problem. So do they panic? There could be an element of panic. Clubs, and I'm not saying that Hull City are going to panic, but clubs panic in the final hours of the window. They've panicked before. You know, the issue now is they are they can only sign players by moving players out, and that is, you just have to wait. We're going to have to wait and see. I mean, I could sit here for the next 2 hours speculating on what may or may not happen. We just don't know. But it's going to be fascinating to see what happens. Yeah, Tom, the EFL, I do think there's an element of the EFL being overly harsh on City. I do. I think they are scorned by what has happened at Reading, the criticism they got. Also, what's going on at Sheffield Wednesday, how that's kind of manifested under Chansiri over the last couple of years. So they are, I think, being overly harsh on City. But then, as I've said on these things before, there will be those people that say they're doing the right thing, that they're protecting City from themselves. They're protecting City from going out and spending money. And the EFL will say, well, they've not been able to keep up with transfer payments. They've struggled to meet those obligations, so they clearly can't afford those payments. So there's a problem. So we're going to stop it. We're not going to let them, you know, take on more debt, more transfer debt that they can't, if they can't afford it. Now, in interest of balance, the owner disagrees. The owner says we can afford it. You know, we've paid. We may have paid late, but we've paid everything on time. We might not have paid it on time, but we have paid everything that we've been asked to pay. So that's there's two sides to it. But the EFL, what I would say is you can't criticise the EFL for allowing clubs to get into financial difficulty and then criticise them for trying to protect clubs from getting into financial difficulty, which essentially is what they're doing. Now, I think there's a feeling that the club initially, that the EFL were doing the right thing. I think there's some feeling from some people within the football club that perhaps have maybe changed their opinion and now think that the EFL are just being difficult. But look, whatever, you're going to have one or two sides, aren't you? You're either going to think that City are being harshly treated, and the EFL should let them get on with it, and there'll be those people that think the EFL are doing the right thing. So, and whatever side you're on, you'll have your own opinion, and the club have got, and there'll be people within the football club, and I know there is, that think the EFL are doing the right thing, and there'll be people within the football club that think the EFL are being far too harsh. So we'll have to wait. But it is what it is. Ultimately, all the clubs, all 24 clubs, sign up to the rules at the start of the season. Hull City being one of them. You have to abide by the rules. And in English football, if you sign a player and you've got to pay £15 million over the course of 5 years, and you have 10 payments structured over that 5-year period, and you've got to pay £250,000 on the 15th of October, you have to pay it by the 15th of October. It's no good on the 12th of November or the 15th of December. That's not okay. You can't do that. And Hull City are being punished for breaking the terms of the contract. And like it or not, them's are the rules. And paying late is not okay. And if they notch up 7 days of late payments in the next 12 months, that third window will be activated. And suddenly they won't be able to buy players until January 2027. That's a long time away. You know, that's a long time to muddle through with free transfers and loans, and, you know, not being able to go out and get a centre-half because you centre-half out for 3 months. These restrictions are meant to be there as a deterrent. If every club, and this is the thing, they've missed out on so many players. Owen Beck went to Derby. I know he's injured, but Owen Beck went to Derby, missed out on him. Toby Collier to West Brom. Looks like Lewis Kumas going from Liverpool to Birmingham City. There are other players they've missed out on because of these restrictions. If you could go out and sign all the players you wanted, despite being under transfer embargoes, well, where's the deterrent for clubs to play to the rules? If City could go out and sign everybody, other clubs would look at it. Well, go, look, Hull City haven't paid on time. We don't need to. We're okay. We'll just, you know, there has to be a deterrent. And so the deterrent is Hull City missing out on Toby Collier, or missing out on Lewis Kumas, or Owen Beck, or insert 2 or 3 other players that they've not been able to sign. Mattia Freegam, obviously, unfortunately for him, he's done his ACL after going to Parma. Although I'm not sure how Hull City do a deal. The players, he's gone for €9 million. But anyway, you know, there has to be some kind of punishment for not paying your bills on time. And that's basically what Hull City have not been doing. And like it or not, whether the money's there or not, and as I say, the owner, in balance, the owner says the money is there and we've paid all our debts. We just have paid them late. There's been some communication problem. But if that communication problem isn't fixed, that third window is going to come into being. The EFL won't, there will be no appeal. There will be no mitigation. It is, you have not paid, or you've clocked up more than 7 days of missed payments in this period. That third window has been activated. So that is something to watch. Let's have a look. Any more questions? Questions on, QPR have started the comeback. It's 7-1 in Coventry. Yeah, Tommy, the sickness bug, some people will say it's not an excuse, some people say it will. Look, it's affected them. I'm not going to make excuses and say it's because that's why they lost. But ultimately, if you have a sickness bug that rips through your squad, you lose some of your key players, or some of your key players aren't at full fitness, it's going to have an impact, like it or not. I'm sorry, but it is. We've all had sickness bugs, and we know exactly how it makes us feel. Now try and go and play a game of Championship football when you're not feeling 100%. It's gonna. Adam, in terms of, there was some confusion about. I was told last night that Charlie Hughes was out because he was ill. I was told again this morning it was because he was ill. Then there was some suggestion that he'd actually picked up a concussion. He got a bang on the head last week against on Sunday against Oxford. So there was some suggestion that he was sidelined with concussion, and under those protocols, the managers confirmed afterwards that he was, in fact, he was, as I was told earlier last night, that he was ill. And I apologise, I don't know who I saw. If Palace want to come in and offer £18 million for Charlie Hughes, he's going to be sold. They think that they can get 20 million for him next summer. If Palace or any Championship team are prepared to offer £18 million now for Charlie Hughes, the hand will be shaken and he'll be off. And I don't think anybody with a reasonable mind could argue that that's not good business for Hull City at this stage. Anyway, Matthew, with the appeal happened, why wasn't there anything that with outcome to regard? I don't understand that question, sorry, Matthew. If you want to try and repeat that, sorry. Why can't you play Gowhart as number 10? I'll be honest, I think he will. I think it's needs must, because he's not had. There's no Miller, there's no Balumi, Akintola. Jury firmly out on him, but still getting up to full speed. It's needs must. My gut feeling is when Mo Balumi is fully fit, you'll see Undala on the left, who I thought, by the way, was good today. Despite the result, I thought some real signs of promise as well. And let's not forget, that's only his 3rd senior game, so let's be patient with him. I think when Balumi is ready to start, you'll see Undala left, potentially Miller, Gowhart in the number 10, and then Balumi back on the right. Casey Palmer's in there at the minute, so I think he's been relatively happy with Casey in the number 10. So I think when Balumi's, oh blimey, sorry, Sheffield United 0, Millwall 1. Does Ruben even make the game here on October the 4th? I'm not so sure. That is a bad result at Bramall Lane for Ruben. Anyway, yeah, I suspect that when Mo is back fully fit and able to start Championship football matches, I think he'll be back out on the right. And I think he sees Gowhart as a long-term number 10 to have a really good relationship with McBurney. So at the minute, they're having to fudge through because obviously Miller isn't fit and Balloum is not fully fit either. So that's one to watch. Hopefully that answers your question, Adam. Let's have a look. Have we got any more questions before I make the journey home? Lou, Oxford made it difficult second half. I thought we looked very slow and predictable. Yeah, it's difficult to know what to take from today, knowing that they're all on the sickbed 3 days ago. So I think you just have. I think tactically they could have been better. I think not allowing, not stopping Cantwell, but again, I thought they missed Crooks in the middle of the park. His dominance, his height, his physicality, his ability to drift and connect play. I thought Crooks was a massive miss today. But West Brom 1, Portsmouth 1. I'll read out the results as they come in. West Brom 1, Portsmouth 1 at the Hawthorns. Yeah, so look, they weren't good today. But as I say, I don't want to dwell on it too much because I just think so much of it was down to them not being at 100%. It's hypothetical, and some people will say I'm talking nonsense, that they were garbage, and whoever they played today, they'd have been garbage. There will be some say that the illness and the vomiting, the diarrhoea, all that sort of stuff had an impact, and I genuinely believe it did. But they've got to be better. They've got to defend better. What I would say is, as I said, I think I said it earlier on, so I've been on for that long now, waffling, that they're starting to concede quite a few goals. Yeah, we've done Hughes to death. Let's just have a look. Any more questions I can get rid of? Christian, about Puerta, potentially legal things cost a lot of money. So I think the Puerta thing is I just think it's bizarre, and I think the EFL could have played that one a bit better. But again, playing devil's advocate, they'll say, we hit you with a transfer ban, you can't sign him. If we allow that, it opens the floodgates for other people, and I also understand that. But I do think that Puerta thing should have been allowed. When I shouldn't do a Q&A, I would imagine so. I know he's going to be doing an interview. We've already spoken about doing an interview and potentially a podcast once things die down a little bit. Preston 1, Ipswich 0 at Deepdale is a full-time result. Poor Joseph offers nothing. Slater was quite similar. Neither. I didn't think Regan was great today. But again, there's a caveat. Adam, don't Chef Wednesday owe us money for Wilkes? They do. I think it was. I don't think it was a huge amount. I think it was. I think it was about 20 grand. But even so, every little helps. Certainly especially when you've got bills to pay. Robert, I think it's going to be a more positive season, ups and downs. Yeah, it's going to be ups and downs. They're going to be inconsistent. It's the Championship. But I do think they will have a better season. I know it probably doesn't feel like it when you've just been tonked 3-0 at home by Blackburn Rovers. Birmingham have beaten Oxford 1-0. But I think in the grand scheme of things, I think they'll be fine. They just need players fit. I think if they can turn out their strongest 11 and have a decent bench, I think they're going to be absolutely fine. I think they'll be mid-table. I went for 12th in my pre-season predictions. I think if they keep players fit, they've got every chance. My biggest worry is when you lose 3 or 4 players, is the quality there they just haven't got in depth. But we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, bad day at the office. Steve, EFL saving us from getting into difficulties. Luke, yeah, weird one today. Paul, I'd be very happy to keep hold of Hughes. Yeah, I don't think you can afford. It's difficult, isn't it? I don't think they can afford to sell him. I think in terms of the optics and the importance of that of Charlie, I don't think they can afford to sell him. But conversely, if somebody offers massive money, can the club afford to turn that down? Can any club, if somebody comes in with 15, 16 million in the final day of the window, can any club turn that down? Particularly one in City situation, I'm just not sure. I think you have to be realistic. But they would need to have targets ready to go. If he was to be sold at the 11th hour, they've got to get players in, because there's no way on earth you can go through to January with Ajay, Famewo and Egan, and then McCarthy as a backup, potentially Louis Coyle dropping in, Lundstrom could potentially, even Crooks. That's a recipe for absolute disaster. Richard, Liam Cooper. Interesting shout for Liam Cooper there. Right. Luke, I've mentioned Amir. Yeah. That deal is ongoing. It's not an easy one because Besiktas want, obviously he'll be on a good wage of salary in Istanbul, but they are trying. Full-time at Carrow Road, Norwich 1, Middlesbrough 2. But they're trying, and obviously Kamara Go means they can do that. But yeah, Luke, I will publish this video when I get home as on the YouTube channel. So if you've missed anything, you can catch up with my inane drivel and waffle. Just a quick scan if there's anything I've missed. Luke, yeah, I get what you said about replacing him. Robert, any news on investors? That's one for Adjan at some point in the near future. Yeah, lots of comments on Charlie not being able to, and that's the situation they're in. Look, they potentially can't replace him they can't go out and buy a replacement for the next 3 windows. Two windows, potentially a third if they're not whiter than white. So that's a real dilemma for them. But I think he goes next. If they're in the Championship, he goes next summer anyway. So that's the problem. They've got to have. But that's where your scouting system and your recruitment team, earn their money, isn't it? They have a list of players. Right, if Charlie Hughes goes tomorrow, this is the player we're going to target. This is the player we're going to go and get. If Charlie Hughes is sold, if Charlie Hughes goes in January, this is the player we're going to go and get, and so on and so on. Michael and Darla, yeah, I think he's fantastic. I think ideally they would have liked to have bought him, but given the situation, they obviously can't do that, so it's a loan. But I've been really encouraged. Joel is a really highly rated player in football. He went to PSV, and he was under Jan Vennegoor of Hesselen. You'll remember him, and at PSV, but it just didn't work out for him. He then signed, as I said before, he's then signed for Forest in January. Both clubs had options to buy him, but didn't take them. And I remember when he signed for Forest in January, there was a lot of excitement when he joined. He went into Forest Academy, just didn't work out for him. You know, he's played Youth Champions League. Man City rate him highly, but they needed to get him out and play Championship. I really like him. I think he's got a lot to offer. He's raw, and there are going to be times when he gets the ball and he runs down the blind alley, and you're like, oh, pass it or do this or do that. But he's got pace. And I like he's direct. I said this before, that he reminds me a bit of an even rawer Jaden Philogene. But I think he's a lad that you persevere with, and you give him time to develop. So yeah, I like Undala. I think he's a really exciting player to watch. Paul, on McCarthy, I think I've touched on Cathal already. I think he's got a lot of talent. I really think he's got a lot of talent. But that's a tough baptism as a fire. Chucking an 18-year-old who's never played at this level. I mean, he was playing for University College in Dublin earlier this year. He was signed by the academy. He was expecting to be in the under-21s all season. You know, he's kind of Stoke have won at Southampton. What a start from Mark Robbins. He was thrust into the first team by chance because of the situation. I thought he looked nervy early on. There was one early on when he got the ball in the middle of the park and he took a heavy touch. I think it was a hash. He closed him down and then he pulled him down and gave away a foul. There was a couple of times as well where he looked bright. Look, what we can't do is hang a young kid out to dry. That's tough out there. You know, they conceded 3 goals. They've lost 3-0 at home on his debut. You know, he's coming in alongside John Egan, and they as a collective they've not defended well at all. But look, make no mistake, he's a really good young talent, and I would expect more from him. But I think, yeah, I'm not going to criticise him because he's 18, first ever game at this level. That's not an easy task. So I thought he stuck to his task well. He got better as the game went on. But as I say, as a collective unit and with more experienced players around him, they didn't help him out at all. Didn't think the midfield helped him out. Thought they were too open. You know, Giles said himself he didn't play well. Drame didn't play well. Egan didn't play well. The goalkeeper didn't play well. Suddenly, when you've got 8-9 players around you not playing well, and you're 18 on your debut, that's a big ask. So nothing on him today, absolutely all. Jordan, any news on the crumble? No, Mike White ruined that. Mike used to take. You'd see Mike walking out the ground with like boxes. He'd have 5 suitcases in his car ready for crumble, and it's costing the club thousands in crumble. So he was like, Mike was the crumble fiend. So we've got Mike White to thank for crumble being banned in the press room after the game. So thanks, Mike. I know you're watching, sweetheart. No, get well soon. I know he's not been very well as Mike, so we send him our best wishes. And yeah, Steve Jordan back on the mic. Back on the mic today. That was great to see as well. Right, I'm going to call it a day there because I've chatted absolute garbage for, I dread to think how long, and I'm dying for the toilet. That's it from here in the car park. I do like a car park. Hopefully I won't be in a car park at Ashton Gate. Hopefully they won't close the ground and I can sit in the stand. That's it. Obviously, we're expecting a busy week. We'll see what happens with Abu. Hopefully the players, wish them well, they get back, and some of them, particularly Charlie, is feeling a bit better next week, and they can be a bit stronger when they go to Bristol City on Saturday, which will be one hell of a game. We'll have plenty more, obviously, from the fallout from this game. Hopefully we'll have a podcast for you on Monday. I know I've got a couple of days off next week to spend with the little one, so no doubt things will happen next week. But yeah, that's it from here at the MKM Stadium. Plenty more to come on transfers, on injuries, on sickness, and all that sort of stuff over the next few days. As always, everybody, thank you for getting in touch. Thanks for your comments, questions, as always. Appreciate the support. And yeah, up the Tigers. Try and have a good weekend. I know it's disappointing today, but you know, there's plenty of reasons to be optimistic about the season, even though today's a bit of a kick in the knackers, isn't it? But yeah, have a good weekend, everybody. Up those Tigers.